Hello, welcome to Tech and Data Unlock. I'm your host, Bill Palifka. I am here with Tess Partridge, founder of At Home Ads. Aha, right? Did I get that right, Tess?
Nailed it.
Oh my God, I'm so glad, right? You never know with these podcasts. But Tess has an amazing story here. And, I'm just excited to have you on our show today, Tess.
Thanks, Bill. I'm super pumped to be here. It's going to be fun to catch up.
Yeah. So, Tess, you and we met at an event called Warrior Rising. And so, one, I have to say, I know your husband is a dedicated military person, but it's our families that support our military people are just as equally as important. And you're that military spouse that gives us military people the ability to go out and do what we do every day. So I want to first off thank you for that because as a military person myself, I know I couldn't do it without my wife, and you guys have a special place because you keep a lot of the back home stuff running so we can go out and do what we do. But
Yeah,
Warrior Rising's where we met. So
it is. That was a super fun weekend. I look back on that with fond memories, mainly circled around the people we met and got to hang out with for 48 hours. It was a really good time.
it was a really good time. And for all of you listeners, if you're a veteran entrepreneur, Warrior Rising helps you get critical skill sets to help launch your startup. Then Tess, you have an amazing startup. I got to say, one of the things that I really, really like the moment I met you and I heard about at home ads, right, was like, I just loved it. So like, let's talk about that for a little bit.
Sure.
So at home ads, what is it?
So with at home ads, we have created a marketplace and we are trying to monetize private property for what we're calling mini billboards, but essentially temporary yard signs ranging from small to big. So from someone's front yard to perhaps a farmer's acreage, like along the interstate. In that space where there's like, I always envision like the corn, and then there's like that weird space of like dirt between the corn and the fence. It's like the perfect spot for a big temporary yard sign.
Well, and I got to tell you, as a person who has spent a fair amount of time on the roads, I've seen a few billboards and signs in my life. I just thought, wow, what a powerful idea and concept that you could turn around and allow people to monetize their land, right, and do this in a shared platform and create that marketplace to connect people so that they can, like us who want to get our word out to folks. We're always constantly saying, like, how do we get seen, how do we get heard, right? And but there's only so many mediums that we can do this in. And for our small or local businesses and even our large businesses, right? Billboards
Mhm.
have been a very viable way. So I was excited to learn about your business and hear what you were doing. So how are things going with this?
They're going well. So we did a soft, I don't want to call it a launch. It was more so just a way to test what we were doing in a target territory. So sort of like a beta push. And we generated about $10,000 in revenue in over the course of 3 months, but a large portion of that was in the first month and a half. We hit it hard and started to get consumer feedback and then turned everything off. We got a lot of feedback and said, okay, we need to make a little bit of a pivot here. And so we turned all ad spend off and have been working on it since. In the meantime, we've had some just organic growth from that initial push. And of course, we've been fulfilling those. Um, but what we've done is we've proved there's a need. We have the homeowners who are super easy to get. They want to make that passive income by putting a sign in the yard. And then we have the advertisers who have signed up, and we have paying customers. What we realized is there was a little bit of a disconnect between what the advertisers wanted to pay and what the homeowners were asking. So we were allowing the homeowners to establish a price, and we are pivoting from there and allowing the homeowners to still establish like an asking price, but now the advertisers can offer them a price per day to see
Uh,
if, talking about data, there's no data in this type of market. We're trying to establish the data. And so I'm hoping we can get there by having that offer system and then taking it from there.
Well, Tess, I think you and I, we've talked about this previously, right? That ability to set a market rate, right? That formula that you're driving towards, right?
Mhm.
how, how do you get there, right? There's a whole bunch of different ways. So, it's interesting to hear you start with the fact that, you're allowing the landowner to set the price, but then now
Mhm.
you've got the other side of the equation of like, hey, here's the reality of what I'm willing to do from the actual customer, and somewhere in the middle the answer is there, right?
Yes. That's
Yeah,
the hope.
so that's the whole, well, no, there is. I mean, this is the beauty of data, right?
Yeah.
Eventually there is a normalization and a mean that comes out of this stuff, and you're able to broker that exchange, right?
Mhm.
And that's really the amazing thing about platforms in itself. And again, that what really fascinated me about what your business is, especially being it, like really gave me an it's satisfying on the tech side of my brain, right?
Mhm.
That idea of like, wow, that's like really cool, you know. So,
Thanks.
um, so in your industry, how is this disrupting the industry?
Whew, that is a loaded question. So we didn't walk into this thinking we are in direct competition with anyone. There's no one else. People say, there's always somebody else doing it. Well, there's really nobody else monetizing private property for signs. People are monetizing private property for pools. They're, Airbnb. You can go stay in someone's house. You can rent someone's closet and store stuff in it. But currently, no one's monetizing land for signs.
Well,
Uh,
I really thought, Tess, when I heard your idea, I really did compare you to Airbnb and being that disruptive, right?
yeah,
I mean, if you look at the ad industry, I mean, the ad industry spends billions and billions of dollars a year just trying.
billions. It's
It's
crazy.
and then you look at search engine optimization, right? And
Mhm.
you see how much money companies spend. And I think as a business owner, you're always trying to find that voice out in the marketplace. You're trying to get eyeballs to you.
Yep.
Um, you know, uh, People are constantly changing the cost of acquisition of those eyeballs on you, and so
Mhm.
I think you coming in with this unique idea, it really can change the game for businesses, and give them another avenue that just traditionally hasn't been available, right?
No, that's what we're going for, and what we unexpectedly faced was that there's a billboard company that does not like us, and they are, trying to work with the city that we launched in to essentially push us out of the market. Sort of like a David versus Goliath type of scenario, but the
Yeah.
good thing with at-home ads is we're agile, and billboard companies aren't. They have these huge monstrosities along the side of the interstate, and they're locked in there, but with people who own land, that space is much more vast than
Well, I mean,
all
this
the
is no
billboard spots.
than the disruptiveness of an Uber, right?
Mhm.
And what happened with the taxi cab like drivers, or what happened with Airbnb, and what happened with hotels, right?
Yep.
I mean, as a person that traveled quite a bit, I think there was like a point in my life where I was spending 145 days in hotels,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, great. I had all these Marriott points, but if I had to stay in another Marriott, I thought I was like going to lose my mind, right? And
That's
Airbnb, it was
I
like
know. You
I
get
was
your own
like
house.
I was like, "Oh my god, this is the best thing in the whole entire world." Because when you're away from your family and you're spending that many days on the road, it's like, man, you just want to feel like a normal environment. And
Mhm.
when I was in hotels, I just didn't feel that way. And
Yep.
I compare this a little bit, to the fact that advertising has become the same way. Google search for me is like, great, I can get a book, I start to get wins, but as soon as I get wins, they change the pricing structure on me,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
now it's like, well, okay, I need competition, obviously, to because we do not have unlimited budgets for marketing,
Mhm.
and these things. So, again, I just commend you. I think this is really an amazing idea. So Tess, how did you come up with this idea?
So, Uh, I may have been called scrappy a time or 2 in my life, and
No,
I say it ain't so.
no, I
Um
never believed that.
I actually started a fitness business after getting married. We had our first child. I had some pretty large professional aspirations, and as a military spouse, was really facing bouncing from place to place, taking some entry level jobs, and just decided I did not want to do it again with a little guy at home. He was probably 6 months old at the time. And so I loved fitness. I was a Division 1 athlete, loved working out. That was something that I had built into my routine with my little guy, and decided I was going to take everything I was passionate about at the time and start a fitness business where other parents like me could take their kids with them to get in like a kick-ass workout, which is
Yeah,
what I was just doing every morning alone.
yeah, and
Um,
I saw some of those early pictures, right?
yeah.
And the mom showing up with the strollers
Oh, yeah, and their
and it's
dumbbells and, like,
yeah,
they just they come and
I know my wife would have been right there next to you, right?
yeah,
If she had a group like that and where we live, but there was
mhm,
nothing, right?
yeah.
And I just, that was really an amazing thing. But continue. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And so I started a location in Tennessee, and that location has now we have launched, I mean, we have opened over 60 iStrolls throughout the world. In that time, some have um, opened and then closed, just as like a mom has phased out. So we're about over 40 on the map right now.
Okay.
And so, but with that, that is how I got the idea. So I have opened my own individual iStrolls. 3 of them have since sold them, and I would show up to these cities as totally new member to the community. It was always because my husband had gotten a new job within the military, so I knew nobody. I didn't know hardly anything about the environment, the culture, but I knew that I needed to get the name I Stroll out there when I was going to go launch this business. So, um, I originally would buy 30 signs, and at that time, spending 300 or 500 bucks on 30 yard signs to put them on a street corner and it to sit there for 2 or 3 days before the city came and like took it and threw it away. That was a huge loss for me. Like that was a huge marketing spend when I was starting a business with $2,000 only for that money to just get thrown away. And so I thought, okay, what if I spent like 100 bucks, bought 3 signs, and then went and knocked on someone's door to see if I could pay them 50 bucks to put my sign in the yard for a month.
Right.
And my husband was like, "Okay, well, don't get murdered or like taken into a house, but that's a good idea. So go try it."
Yeah.
And I hate my
But
husband's always like, you can't say it always worked, but it always worked. If I could get someone to answer their front door and be like, here's 50 bucks, would you put my sign in your yard for a month? And if it's here in a month, I'll give you another 50 bucks for the second month. They're like,
yeah.
hell yeah. Like, why not? It's just
Yeah.
like a fitness group for parents. Sounds
It's a
good. We'd
win.
love to support you anyways.
It's a win-win, right?
When
These are getting money and now they're going out for maybe a hamburger with today's inflation prices, right? But
yeah, right.
you
A
know,
single
but
fry.
yeah, no, but no, it's like legitimate, right? Like if somebody came to your front door and they said, "Hey, here's $100. I need my sign out there." It makes a lot of sense. I think it's funny because I remember reading a lot about like the Netflix, right? And the
Mhm,
disruption around Netflix, and they had this moment of like, "Hey, can we actually do this? Like, can we mail DVDs and have them show up in people's houses,
mhm.
and the DVD still works, right? And can we do it for a cost point that makes it profitable to do this, right?" And
Yep.
they had this test, right, that they went out and did, and it was like they mailed it from like somewhere in California to like LA somewhere. I forget the original like location, and they're like
Yeah,
waiting for the CD to show up, and then they like it shows up, they open it and they put it in the DVD player, and they're like, "Oh my god, it still works."
it's
Right?
intact. Yeah.
So it sounds like, you had that type of moment, right?
Mhm,
Where you were able to say, "Hey, I have this idea," right? And I think with platforms like these platform stories where you have three-sided, right? You're brokering DVDs and to consumers that want to watch them in their house, right? Netflix, right? Or
mhm.
Airbnb, where it's like I have a house and you need a place to stay, and the platform Airbnb is brokering it, right?
Right.
There is these like aha moments, right, that you
Mhm.
have where you're like, this could work. And
Yeah.
that's a really cool thing. And Tess, thanks for sharing your story, because again, I just think more people need to hear this stuff about, how do you come up with things, where do they come from? And
Mhm.
there's so many things out in the world right now in front of us that could be disrupted, like what you're doing. So let's shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm a data guy. I like talking about data, right?
Yep.
So let's see, what type of trends are you seeing, and where does data play in your world, right?
So right now, it feels like everything is very AI centered when it comes to data. Sometimes I would say we fall at a disadvantage because we don't have any AI within our tech, but it's something that we are trying to integrate. Data is incredibly important. It's something we grew to realize really soon off the bat. We did not house enough data to provide our customers with particular characteristics that they wish they would have had that I think could have driven more sales. Um, but just gross understanding is that data is incredibly relevant, especially in tech. And I am still figuring tech out. I'm not going to ever pretend like I'm a pro within the technical space as like a first time founder within the tech space. But data is like the life and breath to
Yeah.
companies and how you should kind of execute plans.
Well, what I always thought really interesting about your platform, and as I've gotten to know more about your business, was this idea of how do you set rates, right? And
Mhm.
that coming together of the marketplace. And your approach has been, I'll build one side and get an understanding. Now I'll allow the other side. But what happens when you're predicting the state of the market, right? And
Mhm.
there's probably some areas in there where AI becomes applicable, or I wouldn't even say it's AI, right? I think AI is an overused term in many respects, right? The ability for computers to act like humans, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, what does that mean? It becomes very understandable for many people, and I think it gets misused. But these logarithms, right, that you're
Mhm.
creating. Right, do you see yourself, Tess, where in the future you can be at a point where you're setting these market rates?
That is our hope. So we would actually eventually at some point once we can get enough data and see what that like what those trends follow. Are trends actually following traffic count or are they just following general area and perhaps socioeconomic background of the area?
Yep.
And so there's a lot of like different characteristics that I think could influence whether someone wants to put a sign in someone's particular yard beyond traffic count. So once we have that, we actually want to establish like a two-tier system. And if your house is like a prime house, then you get paid this much per month and you don't need to know the other side of that transaction, which is how much we get. And if your house is like, I don't want to call it not prime, but just another adjective, but like less desired, then you would get paid this much. And then we would take a certain cut of that. So the goal is to, at some point in time, when a homeowner or property owner uploads their land, we tell them you get this much money per month, period. And you can either opt in or you can opt out.
Right.
And if you opt in, somebody runs your yard for a month, then there you go, there's your money. And we can flux whatever we want on the portion we get.
Right, right, right. Well, and it's kind of funny, right? Because there's probably other variables too, right? That
Oh
could
yeah, so
influence,
many that we
like,
naively walked into thinking, "Oh, it's just traffic count." But then
yeah,
we have spots that sell more than other spots and we're like, "Why?" And it's because it sits on a corner. It doesn't have as many cars, but cars are stopping there and having to stare at the sign for 3 minutes before the light changes.
well, and I also can imagine like this point too, where it's like, okay, we're now taking demographic data, right? Where's my
Yep.
target audience, right? And you know, how do you start to align those things and factors into your
Mhm.
logarithm so that you
Yep.
can set the market price, right? So, I
Yep.
mean, you know, Tess, it's I'm really so excited for where you're going, right? I think that your company is going to be amazing. Just only in the simple fact that the simplicity of the idea, right?
Mhm.
This like monetizing my front yard, the relationship that you're building with people, it just makes so much sense on the top eye, especially for folks that are really struggling to get eyeballs to their business, right?
Yeah.
And I love the story, because you felt that, right?
Mhm.
um so hey, listen, we're kind of coming up to the end of the show. I figure at this point, how can people get in touch with you?
You can email me or LinkedIn. So Tess Partridge is my LinkedIn, and then my email is tess at homeads.com.
All right. Well, listen, I also have, this is my favorite part, and I actually learned this from Zach, and Zach is a friend of ours that we know each other.
Yeah, we
He
love
likes
Zach.
to, we do love Zach. So if Zach, if you're watching this, we all learned this trick from you. But he has this, and he sandbagged me a little bit with it. So, we're always looking for next people that we should be talking to, and,
Mhm.
who do you think we should talk to next on this podcast?
Ooh, who do I think you should talk to next? I am going to throw two people out there. One would be my sister-in-law. Her name is Haley Haldeman, and I think data would be really relevant to her. So she's actually in sales, but she has sold a lot of stuff. And the latest thing she's into is insurance.
Okay.
Um, but data is super relevant to her currently in the stage of life that she's in. But the other person would be Rebecca from Warrior Rising,
Uh,
and just I think she'd be great for the show.
And what I love about Rebecca is, she's such a great marketer. So I'm sure analytics and data are really at where her starting point is for a lot of the stuff. So those are two great. So Rebecca, I know you and I know each other. We're going to come out and we're going to find you and we're going to
Yeah,
get you on this. And Tessa's sister, I know Tess is going to now link me up with her and we're going to get her on as well too. So,
yeah.
well, listen, Tess, it is so great to have you on our show today. It's been a pleasure to reconnect. It's been too long. I can't wait to see, where you're taking, at home ads, aha, and you know, best of luck to you out there. So
Thanks, Bill. It was fun. Thanks for having me.
it was a lot of fun. All right, folks, stay tuned. We'll have more episodes coming. Look forward to talking to you all. Have a great day.